The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and good morning, everybody. Just going to wait for more people to join. Please continue to hold for a couple of minutes until everybody joins, and we'll get the webinar started. Thank you for your patience. Just going to give it a couple more minutes, everybody. Thank you for those who have joined already. Okay, well, we're about 3 minutes in. Don't want to take too much time here, folks. So we're going to get started, and those who join in later, we will have a recording of the session. So I want to get this started off by saying hello and good morning, everybody, afternoon or good evening, depending on what part of the world you're tuning in from. GPL is very happy to be working closely with Dell, and today we have Louis Correa, the CTO for Unstructured Data Solutions, and the channel manager over at Dell, Andrew Lagali, with us. Today we're going to be discussing how Dell is bringing structure to unstructured data. Without further ado, Louis, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today and taking the time out. We understand, time is valuable, and we want to try and make it as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. My name is Louis Correa. I am the Chief Technical Strategist for the Dell channel here on the UDS side. Been with the company for 12 years, was an Isilon user before that. So very, very familiar with the platform going many, many years back, and still really excited about being in this division, seeing the changes that have come and are to come in the very near future. With that, I definitely wanted to go into a little bit of that change, starting, 2012, about 10 years ago. It's definitely changed in a lot of these iterations. I remember the 5.0 days when we were still struggling with SMB back in the day, where we actually then implemented likewise. And from there into 2012, of course, the first file system to actually put in HDFS natively. And we continue that today, right? We're still the only platform that allows that. Moving into, the years gone by, we've definitely added things to the operating system itself. And I think it's important to kind of understand, where we've been, what we've done, and really understand that the platform is really, really based around OneFS and the innovations that we've had so far, and moving that innovation forward with OneFS regardless of hardware. And so as we continue to move forward, you start to see more and more integrations with OneFS, the APIs, the automation, of course, the ability to move data in and out of the file system is really starting to take a foothold because, of course, us, the customers, really demand it, right? And I always look at the world in the context of myself being a customer, because at the end of the day, I have a mobile device, I have a smart home, I have a smart car. Those things drive a tremendous amount of data and continue to produce data for companies like SoCal Edison, like Tesla, like GM, that they are taking that data in to make our experiences better. Much like the Netflix of today, you'll start to see more of that really start to come into your hand with mobile devices, into your home. Of course, you're seeing it now, and you've seen it, with Alexa and those types of capabilities in homes. What we did recently with OneFS is we actually moved it to a new hardware platform. And of course, that was really thought of when we merged with Dell. The timing or the question was, okay, when are you guys going to put OneFS on Dell hardware? And we did it a couple of years back. And as we move forward, we're continuing to innovate in the ways that we can really bring hardware across all of our UDS platforms, the ability to be put on any hardware. And so we continue to drive that model forward. Now, yes, of course, it's not as easy as just saying, hey, OneFS is pretty software defined anyways, let's just put it on anything, right? There's a lot of underlying hardware technologies that we still have today. And that's still what allows us to continue to grow these file systems today at 100 petabytes, right? So these are unheard of numbers that you're seeing out in the market today. But OneFS is really, truly the cornerstone when it comes to 100 petabyte file systems. And when you look at OneFS and what it brings to the table, recently we just added S3, so the S3 capability to OneFS. Now, what's unique about when we add protocols, unlike our competitors, it is integrated into the file system. And so today, with our file system, we also have inline deduplication. So you'll be able to, of course, have that across all the protocols that come over the networking side. Of course, there's the protocols are up on the top there, but really giving you the ability to take any workload and point it to OneFS and have the capability of the features and functionalities of OneFS. And of course, you guys know smart pools, snapshots, Sync IQ, all of those software components stay true today as they did many years ago. They're still built into the file system, so they're not external hardware or external software that has to be put in. These are truly built into the file system. That's what allows us to continue to grow to these 100 petabyte scales. Of course, it's still the same single file system. It's still the same user space, and it allows customers to be very agile within their environments. As we've moved forward, and we just recently released, is our hybrid nodes on our PowerScale platforms. These are very much like our Gen 6 platforms, with, of course, the added inline data reduction capabilities, not only across our flash portfolio, but of course, across our hybrid portfolio. And we also, of course, added more RAM, more CPU to these boxes to make them bigger and faster than their predecessors. So having those capabilities is really giving us the ability to move into a much bigger footprint in the data center without having to take up the physical space. So that's really, really exciting for us as we move forward. Now, of course, you have in your environments, there's not just the data center, right? We continue to move OneFS out into the edge. You, of course, heard of our multi-cloud offerings. Of course, maybe even our Apex offerings. These are offerings that keeps you agile, having the capability with Apex to have an OpEx model. These are very, very big things in the industry right now that we continue to move forward in. Now, OneFS is just one piece of that, right? OneFS, of course, I talked a little bit about it, continuing to leverage things like smart pools, but having integrations with some of the third-party softwares and vendors out there when we talk about ransomware protection, air gap protection. These are all things that are top of mind for everybody. Having the ability to detect ransomware real time and actually take action before the threat can get out of control. These are all things that we continue to really put our stamp on to make sure that your data is safe. And safe at scale, right? Safe in any scale. When I talk about scale, it's always based on you, the customer, because your environment is much different than the next person's. And so your scale might be 50 terabytes. You know, your competitors might be 100 terabytes. No one really ever knows. And so when we're able to grow from 7 terabytes to 100 petabytes, it's everything in between, giving the ability to have multiple generations of hardware in a single file system, in the single namespace is unheard of, right? And the integration, being able to
just to comment on that, Louis, that itself is incredible. You know, having a storage background myself, the ability to scale up and scale out to that level is incredible, especially be able to do it on the fly. So that really resonates well with me and, you know, the customers that I work with as well.
Absolutely. And again, like I said earlier, I was a user myself of Isilon, and before, you know, smart pools came into the fold right around that 6.5 version of OneFS, you know, we weren't able to do that. You know, it was, hey, if you wanted to put, you know, EX3000s in, okay, you put EX3000s in. And then if you wanted to put, you know, the next generation, which was the EX12000, you know, it was like, okay, you know, how are we going to do this? Yeah, how are we going to do this, right? And a lot of times what we did is we took those 3000s, we put them in the IT department, and then we put the 12000s and new ones in the production environment, right? So, you know, we continue to innovate in those areas of no node left behind. We continue that not only across our PowerScale and Isilon, legacy Isilon platforms, we're actually doing that in our object space. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Having the capability of being able to bring these in and have DevOps ready capabilities within OneFS is really starting to take hold in traditional IT space, right? You know, everybody knew Isilon as the go-to for media and entertainment, and that was absolutely true. We've stayed true to that. We've done a lot of things for the media and entertainment customers on the back end, where things don't necessarily look so pretty and flashy, but from a usability standpoint, from a scalability standpoint, from a performance standpoint, these are all things that we've done from that perspective. Now, it did lend us to go into other workflows as well, and that's kind of what you've seen kind of in the last 5 or 6 years is us moving into other workflows and being very, very successful. because of the media and entertainment industry pushing the boundaries and continuing to push performance. They're the leading edge, in my opinion, in a lot of senses. And that's what helped us drive us to where we are today and having the efficiencies that we have today. So it's really, really important for us to make sure that's understood. And when you look at the legacy Gen 6 nodes, which were the traditional Isilon nodes, this is what the portfolio really looked like with, of course, our added flash tiers. We really had to move forward in the OneFS realm. And what I mean by that is we had software inline data reduction on all of our flash units, but we needed to move it into our hybrid units. And that's exactly what we did several months ago. We brought, not only did we bring the number of options from a node perspective down, because the performance actually overperformed than its predecessor, was really, really important to us. And so we've really tried to hone in on the number of nodes, options of nodes for workloads. And that's really to really bring in the ability to go, okay, these are the nodes I really need. Not, hey, can I get away with this node, or can I do this node instead? It's more along very streamlined. Hey, this is the node I've worked with. This is the node I know. This is the ability I have with that node. And having the capability of taking those nodes and updating the CPU and RAM to a newer version still stands true with these new MLK nodes. These are still 4U form factors. There's still 4 nodes within these form factors. So it's very much the same generation of Gen 6, but with a lot more features added. Any questions actually about this before I move on? Fantastic. Now, I talked a little bit about the Apex and the flexibility that we've done. I talked a little bit about the management of the different protocols and the capabilities within OneFS. Now, and I also talked a little bit about the ransomware and how we can be a key player in having resiliency, not only built in from the air gap perspective, but from a real-time perspective. I'll talk a little bit more about kind of the flexibility. I think is really, really important in today's market. You see there's a little VMware and a little OneFS. You'll start to see more of what we'll call a software version of OneFS. To be honest with you, OneFS has always been a software on top of commodity hardware. Now, with that being said, we've added some things, InfiniBand backends and, some journaling mechanisms within the nodes. A lot of that has kind of led us down the path that it has today. Of course, the market has changed, and now we're going down the software version path of that. Today, you can actually use our simulators that have been out for many, many years in the virtual environments. What we also did a couple of years ago was a multi-cloud. And that multi-cloud enabled customers like yourselves to really take a hold of the performance that is necessary for these workloads. Because what we saw in the unstructured space was a lot of our customers were looking at it from a compute perspective. And of course, most of us do, right? And when we started to look at it, ingress fees, egress fees, I'll get into a little bit more of that, what were challenging. Performance was challenging. And so we really did think outside the box, and we were really kind of the first to market in this realm of being able to have simultaneous connection to all three hyperscalers. So that's something that you can't get with any competitor today. Now, when you look at that, we went beyond just being able to connect to all three hyperscalers simultaneously. In some cases, we've negotiated no ingress fees, right? And then we've also negotiated with all three a lower cost ingress egress fees. So not only are you not having to move your data in and out of these clouds, you're getting the reduced price, and you're getting Isilon performance, PowerScale performance. So everything you know and love about OneFS, you still have that capability. And so this is something very unique in the market. Now some of our competitors are really starting to take notice of this, and I believe NetApp is starting to do the same thing here. It just shows that we've really had to think about things outside the box and not just check the box and saying, hey, yeah, we can do that too, right? We really value our customers' feedback, and we really value the partners' feedback, and really helping us shape the overall portfolio. When we talk about cloud, right, the hyperscalers are one piece, private clouds are another piece. Now with OneFS having the capability of S3, we brought to market ObjectScale, and I'll get into a little bit of that here in a second. Having those capabilities, and also ECS as one of those capabilities, building your private cloud, or even having a hybrid cloud between yourself and a multi-cloud, and or having a native OneFS version within GCP today, you have that capability of now moving that data. Within moving that data, there's a couple different ways. We will release here very shortly, which it was announced at Dell Tech World, was data mobility, having the capability of moving data, no matter if it's on an object store or a file operating system, between the two, moving, copying, syncing, and or tiering. So having 4 different ways of taking that data and moving that data is really something that we've been working on for a couple of years. We think it's very, very important, and will help move customers forward because, again, we understand taking advantage of compute, whether it's from a burst perspective or that's your compute is in the cloud, is very important. I talked a little bit about the native version within GCP, so if that is of interest to you, please let us know. We can absolutely help around that. So our cloud strategy has definitely been a little different than what our competitors have been doing, but in some cases, it works for customers whether you go one way or another. What we're trying to accomplish is to make sure that you guys have the capability of choice, right? What works for the business, right, is very important. What's also important is not being locked into one of these vendors. And that's where the multi-cloud really shines. Yes, you do get some discounts, but you're not locked into having a single hyperscaler. That also means that you can hire developers from all three. This is something that I don't think a lot of customers really think about, because they're typically working in one hyperscaler, and they typically hire developers within that hyperscaler. With multi-cloud, you're able to now have all three. So now you've just made your development pool 3 times larger, right? So that is a very, very big plus there. Any questions around any of this stuff? Fantastic.
Not necessarily a question, but a comment. I like the way that this allows companies to not only collaborate, but also manage their budgets appropriately. A lot of times, in my history working with several different companies, they always believe that, the message is, let's just go to the cloud. It's like, okay, well, what cloud? Why are you going to the cloud? And the more companies have these conversations, the less it's a sprint to the cloud and more of a, okay, well, cloud is one part of our journey. We have to understand where it fits in. So I really love how flexible this is.
Absolutely. And having the flexibility, if you have PowerScale or Isilon today, and upgrading to one of the newer versions of OneFS, giving you that capability of S3, so you can build applications or your own internal cloud, it's a game changer, right? You don't have to add any hardware. You could just upgrade OneFS and say, here you go. Now we have that capability, right? And oh, by the way, now I have the capability with the newer versions of OneFS with data mobility. So if I do need to go into the cloud, I have the capability doing it natively, right? And that's what's really, really important is this is not a gateway, right? You're not putting gateways on top of file systems to make things work, right? And so what does that really mean to you, the end user? It's, hey, I don't really have to worry about my inflating cost if I want to move to the cloud. And oh, by the way, I don't have an inflated cost if I need to move back from the cloud, right? It's all still lives within OneFS. So that's what's also kind of a key kind of message here is having those capabilities and flexibilities, because you never know, right? In some businesses, month-end close is something that you need to burst into the cloud with. Well, having that capability and then, coming back is also very important. So there's a whole slew of benefits here. And yes, of course, there's a whole lot of things that the IT department has to get familiar with. But that's what we're trying to take out of the equation, is having them work with something familiar so they don't have to learn all of this new stuff, just a little bit of the new stuff. When we talk about the cloud, right, and everybody, cloud is less expensive, and this is what we need to do, this is the future. I think in a lot of senses you're absolutely right. There's just kind of this, I won't say a knee-jerk reaction anymore, but it used to be, hey, we need to go to the cloud because why? It's the cloud, and that's what we need to do. But what we're seeing is of course this, right? To your point, what do you need to do in the cloud? What do you think your benefits are going to be? And then let's figure out if all of your applications or some of your applications need to be there, because what we found is that not all applications can live in the cloud for various reasons, of course. But when we do find the ones that can be in the cloud, right, then you start to go, okay, what really makes sense from a financial standpoint, right? We know we need to be there, but really cloud is kind of it's a thing that folks don't quite fully comprehend now. In some places, it's about cost, right? For some folks, for some it's about agility, right? It's just dependent on the organization. But what we started to understand is that applications now are starting to be written in S3, right? And so, okay, that's fantastic. OneFS has had S3 for a year now, but we've moved past that, right? We now have platforms that are dedicated to object and having the capability of not only cloud-like experiences, but having the actual cost benefit of what cloud is quote unquote should be, right? Which is less expensive to operate and can operate at very, very, very big scales. We're talking, of course, hundreds of petabytes. But of course, there's always, again, scale is different for everybody. So don't think 100 petabytes of scale. But when you start to look at, what's happening in the industry, the growth of Kubernetes, right? And the ability to kind of take yourself out of what a lot of folks are saying is quote unquote the data center game, right? You have to be very, very careful about that, and that's why what you're seeing from us, and I'll go into a little bit more about that, is this answer to say, okay, this is something that is very important. This is what a lot of applications are doing. And of course, that's because of us, the customer, right? The I want it now generation, the iPhone, Android generation here. But there are always inherent challenges, no matter which way you go, right? And of course, they're up on the screen, security being one of them. And what seems to really take hold is cost, right? It's cost. And so we released just recently our new platform, or I should say software-defined platform, which is ObjectScale. ObjectScale can be deployed in a couple of different ways. It is very much a developer-friendly platform. And what I mean by that is it's built on a architecture that allows a lot of flexibility. And that flexibility is really driven by the Kubernetes-native architecture, having the capabilities. If you need more search engines, you can just add search engines to it. If you need more storage engines, you can just add more storage engines. So it's very, very flexible in that sense. So each workflow is different. So your workflow is definitely going to look different than the next person's workflow. And with that, you have the capability of really customizing what that engine is going to look like for you. And so what does that mean? Well, that means the overall TCO is now lower, because you're not scaling these things in pieces that you do not need. And so that was very, very true in the HDFS days, and still runs true in the HDFS days today. But we've taken that kind of thought process and said, why can't we do that in an object architecture? And that's what we did, right? And so having that capability within S3 is really, really special.
Hey, Louis, I hate to interrupt, but we are a few minutes over schedule now. I think this was scheduled until 10:30, if I'm not wrong.
Let me see. I thought it was 11.
Oh, okay. Well, let's keep going.
I thought
apologize.
It was 11, but I could be wrong. Okay.
Oh, let's keep going. Let's keep on going.
Yeah. Sure. So, when you look at the overall architecture itself, lends itself for flexibility. Now, it's also really, really fun, in my opinion, is having the capability of being able to deploy it within your VM environments. So this is something that, of course, the UDS team has been working on for a couple of years now, but it was recently launched with a VMware, having the capability of deploying it right in the VMware console, but also having the capability of building your own in a Red Hat environment today. Now, these are kind of the deployment options today. There will be more options in the very near future when the ECS, which is our other object platform, and ObjectScale actually becomes ObjectScale going forward. And so, that is something that is very, very exciting for us. We'll have a single object platform moving forward. It will be software defined. It will have the capabilities of expansion above what ECS does today. And what it will do is take our Dell commodity hardware and live on top of it. And so you'll be able to, of course, have the all flash, which we have today in the ECS, but you'll be able to have that within ObjectScale moving forward. So very exciting times as we move forward. As we also kind of take a look at the overall way of deployment, and I don't want to necessarily say deployment, but consumption models. This is really important because, of course, There is a community way of doing things. We've seen that. We contribute to that every single day. And so the free, quote unquote, free versions of this ability is something that has taken off really, really well within the community. Of course, you can have paid versions, whether it's from the vSphere and Tanzu or Red Hat OpenShift. So really, really excited about how this really shapes up, our overall portfolio in what we have today. Now, as we move forward, it's really important to understand that if UDS as a whole, and we don't just think of the file system from a 1FS perspective as an answer, right? We understand the market is very diverse, and you may have heard of the streaming data platform that was released about 2 years ago. We are now just had released a 2.0 version. It really coincides with 1FS and our object offerings. As we move forward, data mobility is very, very important. Realistically, we're talking about edge, core, and cloud workflows, or a workflow that crosses all three. I didn't really get into kind of the starting spaces of PowerScale, which is that 7 terabyte range, which is F200's nodes. Those nodes will continue to be that starting footprint. It'll be the edge use cases. It was very strong in the edge, and we continue to leverage those moving forward. What we have seen is the streaming data platform kind of at the top of the stack, and this is a platform that I believe in the next 5 years, in the next 3 to 5 years, I should say, will really take off in a lot of environments. Today, we see it in security environments, we see it in manufacturing environments, but I also see this in many, many other environments. And just to kind of give you a little synopsis of what this is a real-time platform that allows streams of data to be come in and analyzed and make real-time decisions. So this is something that typically, a storage unit doesn't really tackle, but we've seen so many asks and opportunities to really take not only our storage that sits at the persistent layer, but having our developers move up the stack into that real-time data analyzation. And so when we talk about physical security, it's really interesting what's happening in that space. For a little while there, we were taking video that was coupled with thermal imaging cameras and having that tied into license plate readers, tied into the ability to have access control in and out of buildings and facilities and grounds. So tying different streams, all those different streams simultaneously really helped, some companies from a physical perspective, I should say a lot of companies from a physical perspective, to say, okay, hey, Louis coming on site, he's driving his car, which most people say, of course he's driving his car. But, it would be a little different if Louis driving a rental van or a rental truck, coming into work. So maybe that might be a red flag. But coming in, taking the temperature of myself, making sure the car is registered to myself, taking, DMV records databases in real time and looking at those, looking at the vehicle, looking at my temperature, and then of course looking at my badge, going back to HR. Is he still employed? I don't know. That was a really bad presentation, so maybe we should have a talk with them. Then going and making a decision and giving that decision to either the gate to open or to a guard to go, oh yeah, he's good, go ahead and go through. And so you can kind of think about what that could mean in the very near future for not only sports stadiums, so baseball, football, that type of thing, hockey, but also taking sound from that perspective. You guys may have heard of a little bit of some cities now are taking microphones across the whole city, and they are listening for gunshots. Here in Southern California, Pasadena is using that. So that's really interesting, taking this streaming data platform and putting in data like that, being able to analyze it real time and give a GPS coordinate to where it possibly can be. So really, really cool things from that perspective, from physical security. Some other things that we're seeing in this space is, taking manufacturing to a different level, whether it's from IoT devices, so thousands of IoT devices streaming in simultaneously, and then making decisions based on what it's seen there. So really, really interesting, and I would say cutting edge, but I think real time is continuing to blossom into new worlds. And so when you start to take a look at the streaming data platform, it's very different than what's out there today. And of course, it needs a persistent layer because it is streaming all of that data. Those persistent layers, of course, can be PowerScale or any of our object offerings. So really, really important there. And then having the capability of bringing back old data from that persistent storage and also doing the analysis. So historical data across that platform as well. So really, really exciting. Then when we look at the overall strategy, right, again, not to take away anything from either PowerScale or ObjectScale, but these are two platforms that are continuing to change the game and being able to be very, very flexible in the market. I touched a little bit on Apex. Apex, again, is having the capability of an OpEx model. Of course, today it is either a file object offering with structured storage. So having that capability, having the capability of ordering that and 14 days later, it's actually stood up and in your data center is unheard of. Having the capability of that being an an OpEx opportunity and object model for your business is unheard of in today's world. We will continue to add platforms to that, like compute, like desktops in the very near future. So Apex is a very, very interesting strategy when it comes to having that capability on site and managed by us, of course. So as we move forward, we continue to really take feedback from yourselves. It's really important if you are a customer today that you do give us feedback in what we are doing right and of course what we are doing wrong. With that being said, data management is very, very important. You'll see some new things coming out of Data IQ in the very near future. And of course, we umbrella all of our technologies with Cloud IQ from a performance and trending perspective. And so when you look at the overall picture of what we have today, although sometimes can be confusing to some folks, there really is a integrating factor within all of this, and that is the data itself and the ability to not only manage the data in different platforms, move the data to different platforms, but also know what those platforms are doing and know what that data is doing. And with that, I did want to leave it for any questions anybody might have. Any comments?
That was great, Louis. Really, thank you very much for that presentation. Really appreciate you being here. But yeah, if there's anybody who has any questions, feel free to ask them now of us.
Yeah, and what you'll start to see in the very near future is having that capability of really the choice, right? The choice of, do I need this to be OpEx? Do I need this to be CapEx? And what those look like. And so I think that's a very, very important takeaway. When we start talking about technology, we're trying to move the barriers out of the way to continue to move your business forward.
That's awesome. Really appreciate it, Louis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mary, do we have any questions from the audience?
No, I don't see anyone. If anybody does have any questions, feel free to reach out to sales@gpltech.com. But we'll send out the recording and stay in touch with everyone on any updates.
Yeah, and follow up real quick. Hi everyone, Andrew Legale with the UDS channel team. We do have a couple of upcoming events as well, focused around cybersecurity for PowerScale. I can attach those invites after the call for Mary to send out, but it's going to be Tuesday, June 7th at, it looks like it's pretty early, 7 a.m. I guess. But yeah, it's going to be a cyber protection for PowerScale, talking about Superna, evolution of the cyber attacks and how we can protect data. And then also on June 22nd, we're going to have a similar event with Arrow. That's going to be with Safe and Tech Blue, one of their lead engineers, going through the cybersecurity play as well. So keep a lookout for those invites if you're interested in learning more about that. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everyone, for coming over and spending 45 minutes with us. We really appreciate it. We really hope to see everybody in person here very shortly. With that, I'll send it over to you guys, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Louis. Thank you, Andrew, for joining us. Really appreciate you on the call today. Look forward to working more with you in the future.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye.